and Kathy here. We're back to talk about Grade 3, Unit 5, Weather Prediction and Design Solutions.
There's a lot to this unit, so we've scheduled 8 weeks for it.
Students will be using graphs and tables of local weather data to describe and predict typical weather during a particular season in an area.
They will obtain and summarize information about the climate of different regions of the world to illustrate that typical weather conditions over a year can vary by region. Students will consider average temperature, average precipitation, and average wind speed for different regions.
And last, students will evaluate the merit of a design solution that reduces damage caused by weather. An example of such a solution could be a barrier to prevent flooding.
So this is an exciting unit because there are so many big ideas and essential questions to consider. For instance, what is weather? What is the difference between weather and climate? How are living things and non-living things affected by weather? How does geography play a role in climate? How do tools help us collect weather data? And how can I design solutions to reduce weather-related problems?
Discovery Education has a number of great videos on weather. One that we like is called A First Look at Weather. It's got good basic information about weather and climate. To access our already vetted videos, go to Discovery Education and log in. Then click on My Content. Go to the folder that says District Content. Click on Science and Engineering, grades 3 through 5, and then Earth Science. There are also a number of Bill Nye weather-related videos. We do have some on DVD, or you can find them on YouTube.
So for today's video, we're going to focus on the first of the weather standards. That's 3-ESS 2-1. Students will be using graphs and tables of local weather data to describe and predict typical weather during a particular season in an area. Before we begin, students need to understand the terms temperature and precipitation. They also need to know how to read a thermometer. We're going to take you to a website where students can practice reading a thermometer. The website we're going to look at is called IXL.com/science. Right now, this is a free website. I'm not sure that will always be the case. When you take a look at IXL Science, you'll see that there are skills and question banks for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We're going to search up here for read a thermometer. We get a couple of options. Let's take a look at the one here for 3rd grade. When I click on 3rd grade read a thermometer, I'll get a series of questions which will ask students to correctly read the value on the thermometer. So if I take a look at this and I read this value at 75 degrees Fahrenheit, you'll notice I submit and get a correct feedback. Now on the next one, if I look at this value, let me select an incorrect answer, 25 Celsius, and hit submit. You'll see that you get an explanation for the answer. So it's helping students to try to correct something that they've gotten wrong. Definitely check out this website for the question banks and some of these skill practices. So this website's a great resource for having students learn and show what they know about all areas of science. One of the very challenging tasks in this unit is teaching students how to read and interpret a weather map. Students need to learn how to interpret symbols and use a key in order to understand the information contained in a weather map. Take a look at a 5th grade open response question about weather maps.
The question asks students to describe the weather in northeast Massachusetts on a day in April. First, students have to know which part of the map is northeast. To do this, they can use the compass rose in the upper right-hand corner of the map. If we look north and east, we see that this location is right above the city of Boston. Then we can look at the symbols on the map. We see that there's a half-colored-in circle. The first column of the key tells us that this means that there's a half cover of clouds. Next, we see some horizontal lines on the map. For this, we look under the precipitation column, and we see that these lines mean fog. In this area of the map, there's also a check mark shape. Under wind speed direction, this mark tells us that the winds are moving between 9 and 14 miles an hour. Since the MCAS instructions tell us to use information from all 4 columns of the table, we see that the only thing we haven't discussed are the fronts. Although there is no mark for a front in the northeast corner of the map, we know that weather often comes from the west to the east. If we look at the western part of the state, we see that the symbol for a cold front is there. This tells us that cold weather is heading towards northeast Massachusetts.
So next, let's take a look at a weather clip for the Boston area in April.
Your forecast for Boston on this Monday. We are looking at 72 degrees for you. Brockton, 72 degrees. Plymouth, 67 degrees for you. If you're trying to get outside, today is the day to do it. We have changes on the way. As we head later into Monday and into Tuesday, rain approaches from the west. We are going to see that transition into even snow in some spots. That's right. Western New York and Pennsylvania, you will see a snowy mix. It stays rain in Boston. It clears out of here by Wednesday, but leaves much cooler temperatures. Take a look at the next 5 days. We are looking at a major drop here. Monday, 72, but heading into Thursday, your high will only be 44 degrees in Boston.
So as we discovered on the map, the weather is going to be changing. There's a cold front approaching from the west, and the meteorologist says it's 72 degrees today, well, on that particular day. That does seem warm for April. So let's look at a graph of the average monthly temperatures for Boston. The bar graph for April shows that the average temperature is 50 degrees.
Let's take a closer look at the graph. We see that the graph has a title, Average or Mean Monthly Temperature in Boston. The title tells us what the graph is all about. There's also labels on the bottom or x-axis of the graph. In this case, the labels are the months of the year. And along the y-axis, we have a number scale. The scale, in this case, goes from 0 to 80 in intervals of 10. This bar graph makes it easy to compare the temperature of each month. Students can see the temperature for January and February is the same at 25 degrees. It gets warmer for the next months, and then in September, it starts to go down again. Lead the students in discourse about the data in the graph and have them look at other weather graphs, for instance, precipitation in Massachusetts.
I just happen to have a precipitation graph right here.
Your students may not be able to create a graph like this, but we do want them to be able to read a graph like this in third grade. Consider this a literacy lesson. If students look at this graph, what information is contained in it? What questions do they have about the graph? You can ask specific questions about the graph. For example, how many inches of precipitation are there in November? What does the word precipitation mean? What other information can we find in this graph? Literacy about reading graphs and tables is an essential skill for their success as they move into 4th and 5th grade.
So please use the HSP textbook for students to gather more information about weather. Chapter 9 is Weather in Space. The lesson that focuses specifically on weather is Lesson 3, What is Weather? An investigation that's worthwhile to do with your students is called Measuring the Wind. It uses simple materials to build an anemometer. Students will be able to measure the wind over a number of days, make a data chart, and graph the data.
Make sure to go to the Moodle site, Grade 3, Unit 5, to look at classroom-level resources for weather and climate.
Wow, this science unit sounds like an interesting one. And you know, science matters.